This is the AMG Civic that you've never heard of. So our story here today begins in the late 90s and early 2000s, which was a strange and great time. A lot of different things happened. So we launched the International Space Station in 1998. We witnessed the horrors of 9/11 in 2001, and we were graced by the creations of the MP3 player and the iPod, as well as the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo GameCube, which are goated. These were strange times indeed, and we in particular are interested in what Honda was doing in South Africa during this time with a car called the Blade. Now, if you're reading this article, I'm going to assume that you have more than likely heard of the legendary automaker called Honda, or Japanese automaker, but if you haven't, I'll give you a quick summary right here. Honda's known for its reliability, impressive four-cylinder engines, and dedication to the front-wheel drive platform. The 2023 Honda Civic Type R currently holds the record for the fastest front-wheel drive lap time on the Nürburgring ever. Surprisingly, the Porsche Cayenne GTS actually beat it. And they've also made the next car I want to buy, which is the Civic Si. And Honda's four-cylinder engines are legendary. The K24 is largely considered to be one of the greatest motors of all time. Honda has actually achieved the best horsepower per liter ratio through their four-cylinder motors as well. And they've consistently produced vehicles that are affordable, efficient, reliable, and fun to drive. Feel free to argue with a wall about that. The Civic is almost undoubtedly Honda's most popular vehicle, and it is a cheap and efficient car, but it also feels cheap and efficient. And in the 80s, this is where the Blade comes into play. So Honda wanted to create a classier version of their Civic, something that has more creature comforts, a little bit of nicer interior materials, but they also wanted to maintain that small and efficient form factor. So that's what they made the Blade. The Blade is essentially a more luxurious Civic that doesn't get as big as the Accord did. Now, one way to think of it is that the Blade was built to compete with the Toyota Sprinter, whereas a Civic was made to compete with the Toyota Corolla. Now, I'm also going to make the assumption that you've probably heard of AMG before if you're watching this video, but again, I'll give a very small summary, maybe some interesting facts. So, I'm going to tell you what AMG stands for, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, so I'm very sorry for our German friends, but I believe AMG stands for Aufrecht, Melcher, and Grobersbach. Aufrecht and Melcher are the founders, and Grobersbach is the birthplace of Aufrecht. Contrary to popular belief, AMG was actually not always a part of Mercedes-Benz. In fact, they were only purchased by Mercedes-Benz in 1999. Prior to that, they were just an impressive tuning company that was independent and free to partner with whoever they liked. However, they did maintain a very close working relationship with Mercedes-Benz even before they were bought by them. I'm guessing they were both German, maybe the founders knew each other somehow. And AMG would essentially partner with an automaker and produce performance variants of their existing models, which is what they do now with Mercedes, just exclusively. Back then, they were free agents. So in the late 80s and early 90s, AMG partnered with Mitsubishi to produce a few AMG variants of their standard models. And after hearing that, maybe, just maybe, AMG partnering with Honda doesn't sound so crazy right now. But now let's talk about the joining of AMG and Honda, and let's enter the tale of this strange but interesting collaboration between some legendary automotive names. Notice I didn't say two automotive names, I said some. So, much of the agreements between the companies here is not well known or documented, so what you're about to hear is what I could learn from my research. So in the late 90s, Honda was looking to enter and establish themselves in the South African market, but they had no infrastructures, they had no dealerships. Now at the same time, late 90s, Mercedes was already well established in South Africa, but they wanted a cheaper entry-level car to sell. So they had plenty of dealerships. So if you haven't realized it by now, Mercedes and Honda hold the solution to each other's problems, and naturally they struck a deal with each other. Mercedes had the infrastructure that Honda needed. Honda had the cheaper entry-level car in the Blade that Mercedes could sell. So they struck a deal where Mercedes would sell the Blade in their dealerships. Now, where does AMG come in? This is where the picture starts to get a little bit fuzzy, because as far as I can tell, there is no documentation that explicitly states why or how AMG entered the conversation. So I feel obligated to say that the rest of this little section I'm about to read is an educated guess of what happened based on the factual information that I've read. I suspect that Mercedes didn't want to sell just a Honda in their dealerships. They wanted to sell something that is more prestigious. So as a result of this, they called in AMG to spruce up the Blade and make it more special. for lack of a better term. And this is how we got the AMG Blade in South Africa. Now, as I stated in the previous section, the AMG Blade is just a spruced up version of the normal Blade, and AMG actually made two tiers of this vehicle, one with creature comforts added and no performance modifications, and the other with both creature comforts and performance modifications. Seems a little bit strange, but AMG actually did this quite often. So the standard Blade was powered by Honda's impressive B18 motor, which produced 138 horsepower. Now, do not be fooled by that horsepower number. The B8 is still considered to be a great motor. Sorry, B18. The B18 is still considered to be a great motor today, and it has serious potential for boosting, which I think a lot of people underestimate or just don't know about. Now, after AMG got their hands on that B18, they got that thing to produce 175 horsepower. So it went from 138 to 175 horsepower. That's quite the increase, especially in the late 90s. And they achieved this through tuning and adding a performance exhaust, which again, very impressive. Additionally, AMG also lowered the standard Blade by about 1.5 inches on I-box suspension. For the cosmetics, they added, I believe, optional new 15 or 16-inch wheels, a front spoiler, color-matched side sills, a white instrument cluster, and a new shift knob. This, I think, truly is one of the most unique collaborations that I've seen in the automotive industry. Funnily enough, both Honda and Mercedes kind of deny the existence of this. Neither of them seem to want to acknowledge it. Mercedes, I guess, maybe doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that they sold a Honda, or the fact that they seemed to consider Honda to be on par with their level of quality. And perhaps Honda doesn't want to be associated with Mercedes when it comes to their reliability. Honda's always huge in reliability, as are the other Japanese automakers. But we saw a tuner company and their future parent company working together, which were AMG and Mercedes, before Mercedes bought out AMG. And a Japanese automaker, Honda, known for producing cheap and reliable cars, pairing with a German automaker, Mercedes, known for producing luxurious and powerful vehicles. It's just an insane storm of conditions and very different brands getting pitched up together. And despite the weirdness of the collaboration, there's no denying that it produced something special. Nowadays, if I were to see a Civic with an AMG badge, I'd assume that some kid trying to make their Honda look a bit more expensive and just up badging. But it turns out that the AMG Civic does exist, in fact, after all.